Hello there. So today we are going to be exploring how you can create a global search or universal search in Airtable. And what we mean by that is that typically in a digital product, you have a search bar, and that search bar will allow you to search for data across multiple tables in the database. So if you think about searching Spotify, you could start writing the name of a track and it will bring up those tracks, the albums, the artists related to that, and obviously many more things in Spotify now as well, podcasts and playlists and all that kind of stuff. So generally that's how search works. However, in Airtable, everything is always reduced down to searching this table of information. And right now there's no native feature in Airtable to allow you to actually change or view and search all that data from one place. So there is a solution to building your own global search, and essentially it's a bit of a workaround, but it does the job, especially if you have lots of data. I think this is quite an interesting way of managing that information. So for today's example, I have essentially my own version of Spotify that is hosted in Airtable. It's my entire music library, and that data is split across all of the tracks that we have. We have all of the artists that are linked to those tracks, and we have the albums that the tracks link to, right? So it's a pretty simple setup. But there's no way for me to search, at least in Airtable on its own, across all of the data across all of those tables. So what we do is we need to build a separate base from all of the data that we have. So I've created one here called Global Search. And in it, we're going to be syncing data from each of the tables we want to search into one table in the resulting base. So in my base here called Airwaves, and I'll just zoom in so you've got a better view, I have a tracks table, an artists table, and an albums table. And in each of those, I've created a new view, which is a synced data view, and I'm sending that over to my separate base called Global Search. In each of these views, I've set up the same three fields. The first one is the title, so what I want the results to look like in my search. I then have search terms, which essentially for me is taking all of the linked information to a track or an artist or an album, making a big list of it, removing the punctuation. And you can use whatever formula you like here. You can decide which fields on your table should be included in search terms and which shouldn't. It gives you a bit of customization around how your search results will appear. Search terms could just be the title. You could just use the title of your records and that's it. But generally, if you're trying to build this search where you're combining data from different tables, you probably want to share a bit of information from each table through lookups and rollups onto each result so that things that are related appear. And by that, I mean that if I search the name of an album, it makes sense that the artist who's on that album should show up on that album search result. And similarly, if I search the name of an album, the songs for that album should show up. So the way that we do that is that we're adding those search terms into the search terms for each of the results. And again, that's completely up to you. That's how you want to design those. So each of those tables, I have the title, I have search terms, and I have a URL. The URL for me is just a link to open that record in an interface that I have, right? So the point of these search results, not only to view the information and see what results are returned, but I can also then expand one of those and actually go to view that specific result in its own interface. And of course, the interface to view and edit a track or an artist or an album is different for each, which is why they each have their own field and a formula in it as well. And each of those views, if you haven't already done this kind of stuff before, we've created a synced view, which is syncing to another base. I'm saying, yes, I want it to be synced outside of my workspace if you needed to, and syncing this data to other bases. And I've done that across each of these three views. Then in my kind of merged base, if I look at my synced configuration here, so I have each of those synced views all coming into one table, and all I'm doing is telling each of those fields to merge, right? So my search terms from each of those three destination views are going to be synced into the same tables, much like any other data that you would share in one table. They are merging fields into one. So all of the search terms, no matter what their name is, they're all being synced into the search field in my table. And what that gives us is a single table which has all of my results. So I've now got 23,000 results here, and that is across all of my tracks, my albums, and my artists. And crucially, they all share the same title field and search terms field. And that is how we're now going to treat this as if they were existing in one table. The only other thing I've done here, just for kind of front end ease really for your users, is that I've created a button field which uses this URL and merges them all into one button, which is labeled open. Now that that data is in one table, it's essentially up to you to design what that search experience should look like. So here I've got an example of a gallery, and in that gallery, I can search the name of an artist. So this artist Digon has one album called the Digon EP. He has an artist profile, and also these are all the tracks that relate to that artist and that album. And each of those I now can open. So this is now opening the album, and it's going to open it in my album editor within my interfaces. Similarly, those tracks will also open their tracks interface. And finally, the artist can open the artist's interface. And it makes a really easy way of searching all of the data across those. The color coding from each of the sync tables helps, and it will essentially return all of those fields for you in one place. So that is how you used synced tables in Airtable to build your own global search and link off to separate interfaces or other platforms that you might use. Those might be external links to other tools that you use in your stack. One improvement you can make on this if you wanted to, we're looking at interfaces in Airtable, right? And what that means is that you can allow for a expanded field view, like a sidebar to view each record. So you could, if you wanted to, bring more information across each of those tables into one place and make for a richer search result experience. Really, the purpose of these ones I've created is just to give you a button to go to the thing. But you could be pulling in lots more information, who created it, when it was last modified, and other helpful data into this single base and display that all here as this kind of unified search solution. Hope that helps. Let me know if you create something similar.